action. My seniors and our guest of honor, trafficking in persons being a particularly pernicious form of human rights violations, call for an urgent need for all enforcement and protection officers to be trained more, also to promote awareness about it and take immediate and effective action to combat it. Honorable Minister, the issue to do with trafficking in persons does not even consider that your literacy levels. You can be a professor and you can be actually trafficked. You can be a farmer, you can actually be trafficked for several reasons that people do. And for Malawians to be in a position to know what does trafficking mean in other countries, for example, this is very important that we really train most of us to understand what civic education is all about. Besides increasing the number of domestic trafficking in Malawi, is known to be primary source for victims who are trafficked to other countries. And for the sake of diplomatic issues, we will not specifically mention those countries, but we know that Malawi is a conduit for issues to do with trafficking in persons. And if you look at issues to do in this region, most of them are trafficked for sexual exploitation, labor exploitation, and sometimes removal of organs. And this calls for every Malawian to know that trafficking in persons is real within and beyond. Therefore, building a knowledgeable team of law enforcement agencies should be one of the priorities the country is to win against trafficking. There are instances, Honorable Ministers, when we could intercept people being trafficked, but then when you take them even to police stations, there are no shelters, to keep them. And these are people who have been trafficked, they are traumatized, and sometimes we are forced even. Some of the police officers could take their own food from their homes to feed those who are being trafficked. And also as human beings, that they didn't budget for it, it has been a challenge to do that. And for us as MNAT, we would want to see the establishment of safe keeping homes, shelters, and where those victims can be rehabilitated and can be taught. And this calls for this training of trainers, that once we are knowledgeable, we will be in a position for all of us to identify and know that this is trafficking. There are some girls even, they could get married today, tomorrow they do the wedding, the other day they're going to other countries, and the other members don't actually know whether the sister is married and in which country she's going for. MNAT is also working to build synergies with the Ministry of Homeland Security and the Ministry of Gender, Disability, Children and Social Welfare, and other stakeholders and individuals to fight the manifestations of trafficking in persons for any purpose through advocacy, education awareness, law enforcement, rehabilitation and services for victims. Honorable Ministers, Honorable Minister, the issue to do with trafficking in persons calls for all multifaceted approach to all stakeholders. And as a result of that, you could actually see, like MNAT, we're working with everyone, including the Ministry of Gender, where you have these officers, the judiciary, and we should be also in a position to be able to intensify the civic education, either side of the coin. MNAT, therefore, takes government as a key partner. It also takes COWARD, which would also require support from us, so that the people who be trained, even from this group, must pass on the message to our homes. Honorable Minister, we have also taken the same civic education in churches and masjids, that people should be able to talk about it. If you find someone is missing in your church, or somebody is not coming to pray in the masjid, you also try to find out where is this individual, and that is the call for all stakeholders, including all our chiefs. So MNAT would like to request COWARD through the Ministry of Homeland Security as key partners to consider provision of support to the network for us to be able to promote collaboration with organizations working in areas related to provision of social services, the law, children, human rights, gender, in order for the network to achieve the following. Number one, to increase the active participation of NGOs against trafficking in persons. Most of the NGOs might not actually see this as something that is very, very important, and therefore, as MNAT, we would want to request the stakeholders, the government, CAWAD, to help most of the NGOs in this area. And not only that, but even the media. If you go to our newsrooms, the media, you might not have someone else specializing in trafficking in persons. You might not have even a television program or a radio program talking about trafficking in persons. And we all know that trafficking in persons in Malawi is real and it is here. And we need each one of us to be aware. So therefore, we also need capacity building even to the media. Like right now, we're talking about trainers of trainers for those who have been gazetted as enforcement officers, but also we also need to train even in villages what would be the best for us. Number two, we actually feel it should provide training of the implementing partners and various other relevant actors or institutions. Why are we saying so? Because relatively, trafficking in persons in Malawi, it looks like a new phenomenon. But if you look at the UN, that's the second crime that one would conduct. So trafficking in persons is very important. And if you look at our borders, and last time that we had functions like we had in Palombe, at Nambazo, you could actually see how our young ones are being trafficked into other countries. Number three, it's highlighting the nature and magnitude of the problem of trafficking in Malawi. And number four, most importantly, mobilizing all NGOs for proactive and responsive actions to protect at-risk population from being trafficked. There are some people, it happens, can we go to another country? Someone will just say, okay, fine, I've found you a job in that other country. And this job will pay you heavily. They go into those other countries. At the end of the day, we find that our sisters and our brothers are struggling. They promised a job that they were supposed to be employed in the other countries. When they go in those, they are actually exploited. And we have several examples, Honorable Minister, as MNAT, that would have even demonstrated, like those we tried to rescue from other countries like Iraq and others and so on and so forth. We also used to have some agencies employing others and promising them good jobs. The danger is trafficking. You can be trafficked while you know. You can also be trafficked voluntarily. You can also be trafficked without you actually being in a position to say, this, what is actually happening now, it's being trafficked. We trust that the relationship will continue to grow and that it will contribute meaningfully towards a more effective response in trafficking persons in Malawi. We as NGOs in this country and as part of the civil society would want to encourage and to commend government and CAWAD for leading this process. It hasn't been easy, even for our police officers and also even at the immigration, for them to detect trafficking in persons. So you find the young ones at the border, they're going to another country, but the officer was not able to detect whether that was it. And if he could actually, the officer could detect, but we didn't have a law that was, empowering the officer to act on it. And Honorable Minister, thanks very much for passing on the act. The 2015 Act is there, and now that the officers, the enforcement agencies have been gazetted, we pass on to you for trainers of trainers that now you take more active role and detect the issue. Lastly, MNAT wish all the participants all the best, and not only the best, but the best of everything, and appeal for full commitment during and after the training. There are some of us, we come to a training, you don't even read the material that we have. And then you keep on wandering and go walking around. We would want to encourage you to get the material to the fullest and try also to amplify the same materials. Like we said, even in our syllabuses in schools, we're trying to put in an element of trafficking in persons. Why is it like that? It's the most difficult area, and we don't want any Malawian to be trafficked. It will be quite interesting to have a follow-up workshop that will review what will happen after this training. We've been having challenges that most of them, the officers were not, the enforcement agencies were not gazetted, and that has been gazetted, and this workshop is here. We wish you all the best as you serve Malawi to the fullest, And as well as, like what we said, do the civic education to others. We are in this room, and I hope those who have helped us, the cooperating partners, friends, government, you would also give maximum support to the people that will be trained today. As NGOs and as civil society organizations will give you maximum support, and please don't hesitate to consult us anytime. Having reached that point, I just wish you all the best, and that the issue at hand is very serious. Our guest of honor, all protocols observed, I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of you and wish you all the best. Thank you so much.
Dr. Malawi, thank you very much for that illuminating and informative remarks. As you can see in his welcome remarks, he actually revealed that he's the first of the 3 hosts for this particular training, and that is the Malawi Network Against Trafficking Persons that are co-hosting this event with the Conference of Western Attorneys General and the Ministry of Homeland Security. At this point, let me invite Deputy Commissioner of Police, Mr. Mwai Karua, to also make his remarks. Thank you.
The Honorable Minister for Homeland Security, Honorable Dausi MP, delegates from the Conference of Western Attorneys General, Your Lordship Justice Kachali, and all members from the Malawi Judiciary, the Chairperson of MNAT, Dr. Mlonya, all facilitators and distinguished participants. I'm greatly honored this morning to stand before you, Honorable Minister, of course on behalf of the Inspector General, to make some remarks. As we are all aware, human trafficking is a problem that requires serious attention from all concerned stakeholders. As a country, Malawi is a source, transit, and destination for human trafficking. There is also a problem of trafficking within the country for purposes of sex exploitation and forced labor. The country has registered important gains in the fight against trafficking, especially after the enactment of the Trafficking in Persons Act in 2015. This is of course attributable to the good cooperation amongst all stakeholders involved in the fight against trafficking. Despite this achievement, Honorable Minister, human trafficking remains a serious challenge. We often hear stories of our Malawian sisters who were promised a better life but ended up as sex slaves and drug traffickers in the Middle and Far East. Similarly, some of our Malawian brothers have died in mysterious circumstances after being trafficked from Malawi. Admittedly, Honorable Minister, there is still a lot of work that we have to do as law enforcement agencies, and will be seeking your support in this regard. Firstly, there is need to train our police officers, our immigration officers on human trafficking and other forms of illegal movement of people. Although the service has incorporated trafficking in persons in its basic curriculum, those officers that graduated before the development need to be trained. There is also need to provide joint training for police officers working at border posts and internal checkposts, investigators, prosecutors, and magistrates. This would enable us to achieve a standardized approach to trafficking cases. You will note, Honorable Ministers, that sometimes similar facts will yield different results due to how the prosecutors, the investigators, and the magistrates understand the issue of trafficking. Secondly, there is a need to develop and disseminate guidelines for identifying victims of trafficking especially among vulnerable groups. This is important because one of the biggest challenges that our officers face is identifying victims of human trafficking. As it has been said by the chair of MNAT, sometimes even those people that have been trafficked do not know that they have been trafficked. And the police officers sometimes unknowingly facilitate trafficking of persons. Thirdly, Honourable Ministers, there is need to develop an effective data collection mechanism to enable stakeholders develop well-informed interventions. You will notice, Honourable Ministers, that sometimes we don't have really comprehensive data on which decisions can be made. Finally, we need to promote partnership towards partnership in this battle against trafficking, since it is common knowledge that the battle against trafficking cannot be won whilst institutions are working in isolation. Honourable Minister, without wasting your time, those are my few remarks. Thank you, Honourable Minister.
Is targeting law enforcement officers. Without much ado, let me welcome the board member of the Conference of Western Attorneys General for the African Alliance Partnership, Mr. Marcus Green. Mr. Green.
My name is, first and foremost, I want to thank you, Honorable Minister, for providing us with the opportunity to partner on this very important issue. And I want to thank our partners as we go forward in this two-day training. So all protocols observed. Again, my name is Marcus Green. I sit on the board of the Conference of Western Attorneys General for the Africa Alliance Partnership. And so this morning, what I would like to do, because I don't want to take up too much time, I want to be able to kind of set the stage and so that we can get the program going. So what I'll do is I want to I'll give you 2 minutes on what is the Conference of Western Attorneys General and the Africa Alliance Partnership, and then talk a little bit about the important topic that we're here to discuss and work on for the next 2 days. So the Conference of Western Attorneys General, CWAG, is an organization that started about close to 20 years ago now, started primarily focusing on training and capacity building for 15 Western states in the U.S. The organization grew over the years, and to the point now, and it's been very, very successful, to the point where you have just about every state in the U.S. as a member of CWAG. And so why CWAG? So the idea is that AG's offices need help. They need help in training, they need help in capacity building. It creates an avenue to share information in order to improve kind of this notion of a global system of justice. And so CWAG did not just stop in the US. They decided to expand. They started in Mexico. They did a number of training on issues related to drug trafficking, issues related to trial advocacy, helping Mexico go from a inquisitorial system into a common law system. And so they've been very successful at that, and also some countries in Central and South America as well. Not stopping there, the wisdom of our executive director, Karen White, said, well, why not Africa? And so we have started, and it's a little over 2 years now. We're in 8 different countries, really focusing on transnational crimes, training, capacity building, sharing information, crimes like cybercrime, crimes like money laundering, issues that affect countries and states cross borders. And so there is no more important issue that we cover than human trafficking. And why? Human trafficking touches the very fabric of who we are as a society, right? So you are using human beings. It's one of the worst types of crime you can imagine. It's modern day slavery. It's a crime that is very, very difficult to prosecute, very difficult to investigate. But we're doing our best to arrest the issue and arrest the problem. But we need all of you. We have with us today, we're fortunate to have 2 very, very experienced all very, very experienced and are going to be working with all of you in the next 2 days in sharing information in order to attempt to give you some tools and some tips and share some information in an attempt to attack this very, very serious issue. When we think about human trafficking, we think about the least among us. This crime is to protect the most vulnerable in our society. And so this is what this is all about. This is what the fight is all about. And the key to all of this is all of you, because you are on the front lines. As law enforcement officials, you're on the ground. You're dealing with the victims, you're going after the bad actors, and you're trying to balance all of this. And so what I hope that you get over the next 2 days is a sense of how you can do some of this stuff a little better. And I know resources are tight. I know the human trafficking bleeds into a number of different crimes, right? So if you're talking about human trafficking, no doubt you're talking about drug offenses, no doubt you're talking about money laundering, you're talking about kidnapping, you're talking about a variety of different crimes, and it makes it very, very difficult to prosecute, very, very difficult to investigate. And so this is why we're here. We're here to exchange information. We're not here to say this is the only way you can go about it. We're here to really share. And what I would ask that all of you do is get involved in the discussion. This is not a lecture. This is an interactive session where you should stand up and ask questions. The only dumb question is the one you don't ask. So as we go through the next 2 days, really engage, think about the cases that you're working on, bring your experiences to this session, because that's what will make it fun for everyone. It'll make it interesting for everyone. It'll make the time go quickly, but more importantly, it'll help tease out some of the tools that you'll need in tackling some of these very, very difficult issues. And so the great Dr. Martin Luther King, who said many things, but one of the quotes that I love the most, he says that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And that is very, very true. But it often needs a push. And we are that push. So when you think about justice, when you think about victims, I want you to keep them in mind during the course of these next 2 days, because if we have a justice system, if we have a Homeland Security department, all of this is designed for the victim. That's what we're doing. This is what the work is about. Yes, we want to catch the bad guys, but most importantly, we want to protect the victim. So again, thank you very, very much. It's my 3rd time in Malawi. I always feel at home here. So we look forward to an exciting 2 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Green. I think from your remarks, we can actually hear that the story is the same across borders and globally. We're dealing with the same problem. This is the same story we heard in 2004 when we commenced the development of legislation of trafficking persons in Malawi. And the only thing that I can actually hear from everything that has been said is that the story has gotten worse. That's what justifies this opportunity to have this training so that we can actually exert that push and see what difference we can actually make. At this point, let me invite the Honorable Minister to make his remarks. But before I do that, let me just announce a slight change in our program, because after the remarks, the keynote address from the Honorable Minister, we're supposed to go for a group photo. But we request that we change by postponing the group photo so that when we're going for the healthy break, we can actually go out at once. I think managing the crowds to go for the group photo and come back in the situation where we've lost a bit of time, it will take us most of the morning. So we humbly request that, Honorable Minister, you stay with us, and that when we're taking a break, that's when we're actually going to go for the group photo. Let me invite you now to make your keynote address, Honorable Minister. Thank you.
Good morning. Mr. Marcus Green, Dr. Muronya, my Lord Judge Justice Kachare. I'm told there are two J's here, Jude and John, the Deputy Commissioner of Police, Mr. Chiza Nyongo, distinguished and esteemed members of various segments of our security structures, representatives of the non-government organizations, CSOs and FBOs, FBO, faith-based organization. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I feel greatly honored and privileged to preside over the official opening of this important training of trainers workshop, law enforcement agency on trafficking in persons, which has been organized by the ministry in collaboration and with support from Conference of Western Attorneys General, USA, whose primary function in Africa, and in this case Malawi, is to establish and foster relations with justice and law enforcement agencies and officials to support the rule of law and combat international criminal activities such as human trafficking, drug trafficking, and corruption. Human trafficking is a new trend of transnational and organized crime that the world is facing today. And Malawi is not left behind by the phenomenon. The existence of hundreds of porous borders, the widespread social media, and free movement to neighboring countries in search of work or in favor of is a favorable environment for human traffickers. Ladies and gentlemen, Malawi primarily is a source of a country for women, children, and men subjected to trafficking in persons, especially conditions of forced labor and forced prostitution within the country and abroad. Most Malawian trafficked victims are exploited internally and externally, and through forced domestic servitude, cattle herding, agricultural labor, manual work, and various businesses. Our girls and boys are subject to such kind of unfavorable condition, including tobacco farms. Mr. Green, Dr. Mwanya, my Lord Justice Kachale, John and Jude, Malawi, as a government, is fighting to end trafficking in persons as reflected in the enactment of the law. The Trafficking Person Act, which was enacted in April 2015, and is aimed at providing comprehensive legislative framework for combating and preventing trafficking of persons using human rights approaches. And on 29 August 2017, my government launched the National Plan of Action Against Trafficking in Persons. The implementation of this Trafficking in Persons Act and the National Plan Against Trafficking in Persons is government's priority in creating Malawi free from trafficking in persons. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this workshop aims to introduce law enforcement officers to a subject of TIP, trafficking in persons, and associated concepts to discuss Malawi's legislative response to trafficking in persons, TIP. To discuss the role of law enforcement officers and responding trafficking in persons, to orient the participants of the trafficking in person data collection system and effective practices in data collection management, and to facilitate the country's coordination and experiences from other countries. I do believe that the need in the coming 2 days, participants will have strengthened their skills, competences, and more generally enhance their ability to better deal with the crime.